Okay. So, Dinuka, thank you so much for being on the show. I'm so excited to have you and for the listeners to hear about your wisdom, the introspection that you've been able to draw from the books you're going to share with us today. And yeah, so happy that you're here. Thank you for taking the time.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me, Karami. I can't wait to share.
Of
There's so
course.
much.
So, as we talked about, it'd be great for listeners to be able to get a sense from you and all the work that you've done as a woman, as an entrepreneur, as a mother. Um, you know how much books can shed light on how much we need to introspect and the growth that we might need to do at a certain point in our lives and the shifting we might need to make in our lives. It'd be great if you could share what books have served that purpose for you in helping you to grow within, because as we know in conscious parenting, it is our inner growth that is most important for anything that we want to do, be it individually, as parents, as partners, as employees or business owners, you name it. It all starts from what's going on inside of us. And sometimes some wisdom from a book or just even one sentence or a chapter can do so much for us. So yeah, if you could share with us kind of what has helped you most in terms of reading books.
Absolutely. What a great topic as well, because everyone who's listening can grasp something from this journey of books, right? And it, my life has really evolved with books depending on when I've been reading them, right? Because it's been so relevant to me. And when a book really grabs your attention, that's the time you need to read that, right? So I
Yep.
would say, I think it goes back. My whole evolution from childhood started with books from then. But the one that I remember mostly that really changed my life was The Monk Who Sold His Ferrari by Robin Sharma. And just to give you a snippet of the gist of it, was that he was a lawyer who turned into a monk, right? Gave up all his riches, all the success, all the corporate, that lifestyle, and into being and truly understanding what a heartfelt career, a heartfelt life was. And at the time, I was a lawyer also. And I was New York licensed, but I was doing legal recruitment. So I was in the corporate world and I was miserable. I was so miserable. And so obviously, this book fell on my lap and I was reading it and I thought, oh my gosh. I woke up one morning and I said, that's it. I'm going to work with children.
Wow.
That book changed my life. Imagine going from lawyer to working with children, and I had no experience, no knowledge, nothing. So then that started my journey of learning about early childhood education and then looking for a preschool and all of that. And that's how I ended up buying a preschool. And now, 13 years later, here I am. So that was an amazing book.
Wow. It's amazing how one book was able to sort of put you in touch with what your intuition, so to speak, or what you had been feeling inside.
Yes, absolutely. And it did draw on that. And what was even more ironic was that I had found a diary from when I was 13 years old. And after I had read this, after I had bought the preschool, like the initial stages of it, I was flipping through it and I had seen some of my goals and what I had wanted to do at that age. And one of them was own a preschool. I never went down that path when I, followed the academic path of going to law school and all of that. Never crossed my mind, but it ended up happening. So following my intuition was really great, and the book helped me get there.
Look at that. And you happen to have read it at a time when it seems like you were ready to take in um, what it was teaching.
Exactly.
Yes.
Right. And sometimes you come across books and someone recommends a book to you and you pick it up and you're like, oh, I can't get through this. Oh, this is tough. And then well, that's just not your time. It's okay. Right. And then when something does draw you, you know that that is your time. And there is a message in this that is heartfelt. It's not just intellect, it's not just the headspace speaking. So it really is getting in tune with books. And I really feel books speak its own language.
Right.
Um,
I think what you just said is so important and so valuable, because I feel that as parents, we are we might get recommended a few books and read them, and like you said, maybe sometimes they don't speak to us or we don't relate. And what you just said about it's not your time, maybe it's just not a time in our lives where we can absorb, or where we even identify
right.
with what the books are teaching. And it may be that we need to go through other experiences and other levels of growth, perhaps, before we can actually be ready to take in some valuable information, right?
Absolutely. And I have a perfect example for that. A few years ago, a couple of years ago, my friend had gifted me the book, The Four Agreements, right? Don Ruiz. And I had tried to read it. And at that point, many years ago, I was like, ugh, I'm just not getting it. After all of this work and the conscious parenting certification and the energy healing work that I do and everything accumulated, I found it again. And I thought, oh, and I just started flicking through. As I touched that book, after I opened it, I didn't put it down. I read it in one sitting because I was ready to absorb it, because it totally made sense to me. It was stuff that I had already known, but it was going deeper, or it was clarifying certain issues, right? You can read one book twice, thrice, four times and get a different message each time.
Yep.
This was my first time, but I didn't put it down because I was ready. I was ready for that information years later.
And what would you say, that you were, maybe if you could share a struggle or two, that what were you going through in your life at that point with the Four Agreements, with the book, that you felt it resonated with you? Were you going through a specific like struggle, or just wanting a certain kind of change?
I think with that book, I was out actually, I had gone camping with my boys. I had decided that I wanted to get some space and create space for myself, because we had finished our certification, and you know how intense the work is. We do our own work and there's so much knowledge and your brain is kind of saturated with so much. And I remember wanting to design my curriculum, and I needed the space to be able to just think about, okay, how am I going to design this curriculum? There's so much. I want to do this, I want to talk about this, right? And the book gave me so much clarity, and it broke it down into four simple agreements. And I thought, wow, I need to simplify everything. I'm overcomplicating things. I want to give so much that I'm really not giving anything. So it was a matter of really stepping back, and this book showed me how it was possible and how you could actually speak to people in the most simplistic ways rather than overdoing, because that's one thing we're used to.
That's right.
Overdoing, overthinking, overanalyzing, and overgiving, because the overgiving wasn't helping. But this, at that time, the content was so simple, it was clear, it was minimal, and I could read it in one setting. And that was the lesson to me, was more that you can present information to people in a more clear way rather than trying too hard
Right.
to change people.
Exactly. Yeah. I wanted to ask you, can you tell me about a time in your life when you were really struggling with self-confidence, be it in general or in the area of motherhood or in any other area, that you were struggling with self-confidence, and what book perhaps, or what process you went through to help yourself grow, not avoid the struggle, not think it or overthink it, which we tend to do, right, as humans, and not deny that it's there and get distracted with other things. But what process would you say helped you to go through that struggle with self-confidence and in general?
No, it's funny because when, like I said, when I read the book, the monk who sold his Ferrari, I had no issues with self-confidence into going into something that I wasn't familiar with. It was there intuitively, and it gave me the self-confidence because it was meant to be. Having said that, later on in life, I did lack self-confidence, and I still do, right, in certain ways. But Dr. Shafali, I really feel, was the one who got to the root of where this all began and why it exists, and gave me the tools to deconstruct it. So I would say my initial introduction to her was through The Awakened Family in that book. That then evolved into the certification program. But I would say that it gave me so much empowerment um, in unlearning and unlayering, I guess, all the beliefs that made me feel that I was not confident or that I was not worthy, right? So it was really getting to the root cause of where this lack of self-confidence came from. That was the first exposure, I would say, to it.
That's so important what you just said, because she gave a process for you to be able to work through that. And like you said, the unlayering, right? And the being able to identify where it all came from, the lack of self-confidence, perhaps at that time, realizing the root of it, instead of seeing that voice as who you were seeing it for what it was. It was something that you learned from the experiences that perhaps you were going through as a child or growing up.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I feel that it's still a process. We're still learning it. But that basis and the principles of what she taught us can be applied throughout our lives. And so that's what I really value and hold on to.
Mm-hmm. You would say that was one book, The Awakened Family, that helped you personally and helped you shift that gradually. And of course, as we know, it's an everyday process. And for listeners, for you moms and dads out there who are listening, it's a daily reminder to ourselves as people and as parents that this is an everyday work and process, and not in the draining kind of way, but in the, okay, this is part of life. We're living beings and we are going to grow every day, instead of trying to see it as an end goal to, okay, I need to get here as a parent. I need to get there as a professional. I need to get here as a person. No, it's an everyday process.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And one step closer to more liberation.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, look, now I feel more liberated. Oh my gosh, just deconstructed that. I'm even more liberated now, right? It's just being in that present moment of joy because we have been able to unravel.
Right. And Dinuka, can you say a little more about what you mean by now we're more liberated? Liberated from what? For listeners who are hearing you say that. What
Sure.
what does liberated mean for you?
I would say liberated from fitting into a box, liberated from the matrix, liberated from suffering. Because as Dr. Shafali says, there's always pain. Pain is there. Suffering is a choice. And so the liberation from that suffering is what is huge. It's magnificent on us mentally and also physically. We don't even realize, we don't stop to recognize how it is impacting us. And if it is impacting us, then it's impacting everyone else around us.
Mm-hmm.
And mostly our
Absolutely.
children who take on that energy.
Exactly. So, and in regards to you as a mother, would you say that, what would you say has been sort of one of the biggest things you've extracted from any book that you can think of, that has helped you to shift the way that you've seen your children, the way that you've seen sort of like an aha moment where you've thought, oh my goodness, I had been seeing my kids in this way whenever they did X, and let me shift the way that I'm seeing this, the lenses through which I'm seeing these dynamics, right?
Yeah.
Has it been something in specific, or perhaps just just, something that any given book was transmitting in its overall message.
Yeah. Again, I would go back to the awakened family. That was my biggest lesson. And that was my biggest lesson in seeing it from a child's perspective. And I was seeing this in early childhood anyway, right? And as an empath, you do see it, but you suffer with it. So then it's really not seeing it from their point of view. So the awakened family gave me that perspective of, I'm going to remove myself from that equation and deal with what is right now with my child, right? So when my child is acting up, I'm able to not have my ego say, oh my gosh, my child is embarrassing me. Oh my gosh, right? How dare they? This is not okay. Everyone else will say something. Or I need to be a perfect mother. I'm a preschool owner. How could my children act up like this? Right? The judgment. But recognizing that was, I think, first and foremost. And as soon as I could release myself from the ego and see it, recognize it, and then I was able to see it from my child's perspective. And I thought, oh my gosh, all this time, that's all they were telling me. And I wasn't there to listen because I was so blinded by everything else. So the awakened family helped me release that and take the blinders off, or the mask off, the goggles off, everything off, to be able to see it with such clarity.
What would you say was sort of your first action in terms of shifting how you were responding with your children? Because I'll be honest, for me, there have been also, quite a few books that have really helped me to shift the way that I see either myself, life, parenting. But there have been times where it's taken me quite some time from the knowledge that I acquired to actually transforming how I do things, how I parent, etc. So I'm curious, what would you say was the most helpful sort of action from the not knowing, and then you read something, it clicked for you, to actually manifesting it in your actions, the change, so to speak?
Yeah, good question. Because it is really vivid, almost like it happened yesterday. And my kids are now 12 and 10. But this all happened when they were 4 and 6. So conscious parenting came into my life then. And I remember every night dreading every single night with them. I would come back from work. I'm around 50 children. The noise, the chaos, all of that is happening in a good, fun way, great way when I'm there. But then you come home and then you've got food to cook and then extracurricular activities and homework to do. And so you're busy with life generally, right? The overwhelmed mom, the entrepreneurial mom. And yet I know I need to connect with them. I know I need to do all of these things. And the books say spend 10 minutes per child. I'm like, oh my gosh, how do I schedule 10 minutes? I've got so much to do. And even though I would spend my time reading with them, I'm like, see, I'm connecting, I'm doing my job, I'm doing what I'm supposed to do. But I'm reading and I'm thinking, okay, it's almost 8 o'clock. Okay, it's almost time. So I'm coming with this energy. And when Dr. Shafali in The Awakened Family talks about the movie, replaying the same movie over and over again, I was like, oh my gosh, you're right. I'm sick and tired of this movie, because the same words are coming out of my mouth. Go to bed, go to bed, go to bed, right? And
Yep.
and I'm yelling at them. There's no fun in this. What on earth? And when she described it as, well, imagine we're putting our child to sleep with distress and we're expecting them to have a restful night, but how can any human, any being, go to sleep rested fully with someone yelling at you to sleep, sleep, sleep? You can't force a child to sleep.
Oh my God,
of course I knew that, right? Of course I knew that, but I couldn't do it. So the one piece of advice was reflecting on that, what the experience was for the child when I was yelling because of my own need and needing to be in control. when I really analyzed it. But the biggest lesson was to pause. And I know Susie talks about this, Susie Lula talks about it, Janet talks about it. We all in the conscious parenting realm know the pause is crucial. Just pause. No matter how much pain you are in through them not listening, through that you wanting them to do something, sit in that uncomfortable feeling and pause with it, right? I think that was
Exactly.
my biggest lesson. And I paused and it was painful. It was like my skin was crawling because all I wanted for them to do was to listen to me.
So that would be for, you would say that was the sort of that big action that and you know, perhaps it may not sound like doing something because it's a pause, but it's such a big propeller for change, because you are not reacting, you are actually taking the time, even if it's a few seconds, to just close your mouth, pause, and not, you know, vomit out unconsciously something that we're later going to regret, which
Right.
pretty much happens every time we just, you know, project our anger, right?
Absolutely. And I like how you said that, that it feels like we're not doing when we're pausing. It's like, well, I'm supposed to do something here.
Mhm. Right.
So
That's what
that's
we've been
very
taught,
good.
right?
Yeah, that's exactly it. Yeah.
Thanks for sharing that. Yes, I think it's so valuable to hear that it's not like you have to, you know, what if we went, even when we went to school, we acquired some knowledge, you know, whether it was college or, you know, any other form of education, or books, including, and you read something, you acquire some knowledge, and then it's like in your intellect, and we're like, we know something now, we learned this, but putting it into action is a whole different story, right? And for you to say that one of the things that has helped you most, it wasn't, you know, now then I did this, or then I said that to my kid, or then I went there and I took him here, or I woke up earlier. It wasn't anything like that. It was a pause, which is so valuable to know that that has been something that has helped you so much to transform your relationship with your sons, that it doesn't have to be this big action oriented, you know, thing. It's a pause,
Yeah.
because it helps you to no longer go in the same route that you've always been going. It helps you to at least stop and say, do I really now want to go in another direction? Because you wouldn't go in another direction if you hadn't paused
Right.
to not continue where the automatic pilot takes you, right?
Yes, exactly. Like every time you drive out of your driveway, you're so used to going one way, you're going to keep going that way, but pause and make an intentional decision then and a conscious one. And then I have many clients say, well, pause and then what? And then what? Right? Pause, just pause, trust it, trust the pause.
Yes, and for listeners who are hearing this, what you share, you know, many of your clients ask, pause and then what? What would you recommend? You know, for as we know, sometimes as parents, we're big doers, right? We want to do, and the how to, and you know, of course, this is about first and foremost asking ourselves and introspecting and pausing.
Right.
But what do you share? You know, after the pause, you know, X, what would you say?
Right. So first of all is trust the pause. I would say when I'm working with my clients, especially, we really go deep down into how does it make you feel right now? What are you feeling in your body? Because a lot of the time we're up here in our heads that we're not realizing that our body is taking all of that pressure. And as soon as we do, we release so much more to be able to make that conscious decision and a heartfelt one. Um, as opposed to an intellectual one. So when we do that, our brain has now allowed ourselves to really open up. Um, and then we ask, is this coming from a belief? What is this belief? And what is this feeling? What is this feeling coming from? A belief typically, or a thought. So, you know, what is the thought related to? Is it a pattern? Is it a belief system? Where is it all coming from? So when you can deconstruct, there are so many different parts we take depending on where you are at that moment in time. But just analyzing that, but also recognizing that even this feeling, if you're feeling tightness in your chest, for example, at that time, you sit with it. We're not trying to get rid of it, because a lot of the time what we're used to and what we've been told is, oh, let's get distracted, try do something else so that we don't have to feel that. But this time we're going to change it around, and we're actually going to sit with this uncomfortable feeling that we're feeling and be okay with it and say, thank you for being there. Thank you for showing me this. Thank you for teaching me this lesson in life. And my child has now brought up this anger or frustration in me, and that's my lesson. So thank you. Thank you for being there, number one. Number two, then deconstructing where it comes from, but recognizing that everything is temporary. Even this feeling is going to pass. So just be with it. Gabo Mate talks a lot about this as well, about letting it be.
Mm-hmm.
Let it be and know that it's temporary.
Right. I think that's something that we forget very easily as parents, right? We feel that whatever's coming up in our thinking when our children do something or don't do something that we wanted them to, we immediately go to feeling disrespected,
Yes.
feeling invalidated, feeling invisible, feeling, this is what I hear a lot from my clients as well. And it's so understandable. We've perhaps grown up feeling that way, and then our children trigger that inside of us, but we don't see it like that. We feel disrespectful kid. Who do you think you are talking to me this way? Right.
Right.
Unconsciously we feel there's no way I'm ever going to be disrespected again. It's happened enough in my childhood, or,
Right.
something like that.
Yeah.
And no, please go ahead.
Sorry. So
No, go ahead.
one of the things, and I want to be very transparent about this as well, was that when I deconstructed why I was so frustrated that they weren't listening to me and going to bed on time, it was because I felt I didn't have time. I didn't have time for my own self-care. So I was the one with the issue. It really wasn't them. They just wanted connection with me. And I was making it so unpleasant because of my needs, and I'm not being taken care of, and I'm resentful because I'm tired and I want time. And every parent, I'm sure, goes through this. I want time, go to sleep so I have my time to myself. But when we do connect, and then when it shifted, the other side of it was that, wow, I'm actually enjoying this time. My child is opening up to me and telling me all the stories from the day. And once I had released that, that bonding time was worth it. It didn't matter what time we went to bed at that point. And they were able to actually have a really good sleep because of it, because we weren't stressed and tense.
And perhaps even afterward, you weren't even thinking so much about how many minutes past the bedtime, and going into the, oh, this is X number of minutes less of time for myself. You were so in the present moment with them.
Yes.
That didn't probably show up, maybe, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. And at the time, it's really hard. You don't see it that way. But once you do the work, and it takes time, that's the thing. It's not an overnight thing. It takes practice.
Absolutely. Yes. And, you mentioned Dr. Gabor Mate. I've mentioned him for listeners who have listened to, other episodes I've done. I've mentioned him as well in some of them. Do you have one of his books that you would recommend, or that you've read that really, connected for you, perhaps for parents who are completely new to conscious parenting in general, but also to being able to be more introspecting of what it is that's going on within us, and how it really manifests in how we parent?
Right. I haven't, because I'm in the process of reading one of his books right now. And I'm going to say the wrong title, I feel, but it is about the body says no.
Oh, yes. When the body says
When the
no.
body says no. I'm getting it
Yes.
confused with the other one that we read before. You know which one I'm talking about.
Yes.
When the body says no. Yes.
Yes,
One.
absolutely. That's an amazing book. I love how it provides a lot of the science, but in a very digestible way, not like a textbook in college, but, really speaking to the reader.
Exactly. And anyone who has experienced trauma, which is all of us usually, because it's not really the situation or the event, it's how we dealt with it and who we spoke to and how it felt in us and how we held on to it, right? Um, and that's exactly what I spoke about when I said, take the pause and feel it in your body. So when the body says no, really talks about feeling it.
Mm-hmm. You know, one thing that I'd love to ask you, Dinuka, is, as you know, parents and, you know, the listeners are going to probably think to themselves, okay, I would love to read these books, but I'm so busy. How on earth am I going to get through a few chapters, let alone a book? I'd love to, because there's so much wealth of knowledge, right? You as a, you know, as an entrepreneur, as a director and owner of a preschool, a mom to two boys, obviously you're very busy. How have you managed to fit in some time? Obviously, it's not possible every single day, but what has worked for you in terms of being able to incorporate into your life some time for just giving yourself, perhaps I would say, that self-care
Yeah.
to read something that is valuable to you?
Yeah. I will tell you hands down 1000%. And I am not an affiliate. I'm just putting this out there. Audible.com. It has saved my life. And it is the best $15 I have ever spent. And initially I was like, oh my gosh, I can't spend that every month. How am I going to do that? It has those credits, I use them like nobody's business. And every time a book comes up, I've listened to it. I do it while doing the dishes, while I'm cooking, and maybe not being present with doing the dishes. But regardless, it is time for wisdom. And getting up in the morning, my morning routine is I'm up early, I do my meditation, and then I'm listening to something that is giving me some wisdom and knowledge. And it's that constant growth. So Audible has really helped because you can get the earplugs and get about your business.
Absolutely. Yes. Yes. I think that's such a great gift of technology that we can incorporate in while we're driving, and, you know, really be able to at least fit in a few minutes. And honestly, I would say even a few minutes of reading or of listening
Yep.
to an audiobook really can set the stage for shifting my mindset
Yes.
during the course of the day.
Right. Even if you're in the Costco gas line. I mean, everyone knows how long that line is,
Mhm.
right? So when you're in line to get your gas, have the Audible running, you know?
Yes, absolutely. Um, so I thank you for sharing about all of these books. If you could say, if parents who are listening, or just, you know, women and men in general who want to grow within, which would you say would be the top three that come to mind right now that you would want to share? And of course, for those of you who are listening, Dinuka's like, wait, no, there are so many. But of course, there are so many. My goodness, the list is
Yes.
endless. But, you know, not in the sense like this is better, and then this second one is number two because this one's.
Right.
But just that you
Okay.
feel would be such a gift for someone out there who's really struggling right now,
Right.
in their lives.
I think one of the books I hadn't mentioned and was an integral part of my growth in leadership as a woman, as an entrepreneur leading a team of 12, was Essentialism by Greg McKeown. McKeown, I think he's Scottish. And I'm saying that only because I listened to the book, so I hear his accent. And that was life-changing for me. So Essentialism. And then, of course, The Awakened Family, Dr. Shafali. The other book that I really enjoyed was Jay Shetty's Think Like a Monk. Oh gosh, I've got more than three though. Untethered.
Go for it. Do more.
Michael Singer's Untethered Soul. And then The Power of Now, Eckhart Tolle.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the ones that come to mind.
That's great, because obviously we have, for different, even we can simultaneously be listening to or reading something different on any given day. So it's good to know that that's we have so many options, obviously.
Right.
But it's so great. I wanted listeners to to be able to hear your perspective, because obviously as people, we can share as friends, as family members, hey, I read this book, this is really nice. But I feel like it's so valuable for parents and, women and men listening in general, that you are a successful entrepreneur. You are aligned with your vision for yourself as a life, in your life. You wanted to work with children, and you're doing it, and you're doing the work, and you're not just doing it because it's a job, which obviously in itself is valuable because it helps feed the family, etc. But you're aligned with your goals for yourself, as an entrepreneur, as a woman, and as a mother. You've done so much transformation. And I think it's so valuable for listeners to be able to hear what has helped you. All these books that you've mentioned, all these processes of inner growth that you shared, that you've gone through. It's served such a purpose for you. It's not just like, oh, and I did it and then I'm the same person. No, you've transformed your life in so many deep ways. And to know that these are some of the components, so to speak, that have helped you to get to where you are now, I think is so helpful for those who are listening, because sometimes we feel like lost, right? Where do I go? I know I need to change something, and I'm so frustrated in where I am now. What could be helpful? And to listen to another mother who has done so much transformation, who's also a parenting coach, who has also seen the struggles of other parents and helped them through them. And who's also manifested so much change in her professional life as well. I think is just, it's such a wealth of knowledge and inspiration for listeners to be able to hear you say all of this.
Thank you. Thank you for giving me that opportunity. I do have one more book.
Of course. Yes, please.
Do Less, Kate Northrup.
Oh, I've heard of it. I haven't read it yet, or heard it, but heard it on audio. But
that is transformative as well.
Do Less from Kate Northrup.
Less by Kate Northrup. And I think also for mothers with girls, with daughters, it's a great message to, again, shift the mindset on our female systems and our cycles and how we function.
So as professional women, you would say that book has really helped you?
Absolutely.
Whether we're working for a company or launching something of our own, just in general.
For yourself, or even stay-at-home moms, even anybody, any mother, any woman, anyone who identifies with that, or it could, I think it gives us a different perspective on feminine energy, and how to utilize it by not falling into a system of what the patriarchy has taught us to feel and think and do because of it.
That's I had heard of it, but I hadn't read it, and now I'm gonna read it. Thank you for reminding me of it. I remember there was one that I wanted to read regarding that. Thank you so much, Dinuka. I really appreciate you taking the time to be on the show. And I know you have a workshop coming up. Could you share with listeners what your workshop is about and when it starts?
Yes. So it is a deep dive into conscious parenting, 3 days and ways to connect with your child. It starts November 17th through to the 19th. So it's the 3 days and it is free. All listeners have to do is register in the link, and then they'll be asked 3 questions to join the group. So it's a free Facebook group that you can join. And join the 3 days of working. We'll actually be talking about conscious parenting, but we'll also be doing some work. So transformative.
Perfect. So what I'm going to do is, if you're going to send me the link, if you could send me the link, and I'll include it in the email for this episode. Excellent. So for those listening, feel free to know that you're going to just get that link. And what's your handle on Instagram, so people know where to follow you on Instagram?
On Instagram, it is Dinuka, Dinuka Ranasinghe, Ranasinghe.
And I'll include it in the post about the episode, but
Perfect.
I just wanted to make sure I got that
you.
right.
Yeah,
Thank you
and my
so much,
business is the
Dinuka.
parenting evolution. If
The
that
parenting
helps as well.
evolution. Perfect. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much, Dinuka. I really
Thanks for
appreciate you
having me.
taking the time. And yeah, we'll go from here.
Thank you.